one, because without all of those things, you won't achieve the right outcome.
I totally agree. I think the question is not the line, the frontier. The question is what Jared explains very well. Israel deserves security. Palestine deserves high-quality life. And both, and all together, all of us, deserves a great investment in the life and the future. For that, I believe the real question is a cultural question. Of course, when we discussed about safety and security, culture is considered a second point, not the first question. But I come from Florence, I come from Italy, and I think culture is the key point. Just a little experience in my political life. When I was Prime Minister in 2015, a terrible attack hit Paris, the Bataclan. You remember, in the 2015, two terrible attacks, terrorist attacks in January, Charlie Hebdo, in November, Bataclan. And we tried to give a message, very different respect to the rest of the people, to protect ourselves from terrorists. We have to, of course, invest in security. So that means arms, that means weapons, cybersecurity, etc., etc. But also invest in culture, in education. And we created a law in Italy for which every investment in security has to be balanced from an investment in culture. €1 in culture, €1 in security. For every weapon, a theater. For every security man, educator. That is very important in my view, and we copied that from a great history of the past in Florence during Renaissance. The question is for the future, not for remembering what happened in Florence or in Paris in 2015. But it's the future because we discussed with Jared before to enter on the stage, because both, we have the same generation, he's younger than me, but we have more or less of the same generation. And when we see the protests, not only in the Arabic world, but around the world, over the world, all over the world, we are touched. We are very protests against what happened also today. What do you think when you see protests also in the American universities or in the streets of Arabic countries?
I think it's a very disturbing scenario. I mean, Hamas is a terror organization in this part of the world. They have a greater understanding for who Hamas is. It's an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and there's a lot of people who are very bothered by what's happening there. I will say, though, that for the people who are protesting for the Palestinian people, I do think they're missing the point, which is that Israel is not the reason why these people are held back and not living the life that they have the ability to become. I think a lot of the Israeli people, a lot of fair-minded people agree with the aim that the Palestinian people should live a better life, but these people, what they should be doing is protesting the Palestinian leadership. They should be protesting Hamas. They should be saying, give these people the ability to live a better life. You look at the Gaza Strip, Israel withdrew in 2005. It's beachfront property there. Nobody here is looking to go live there because it's a brutal terrorist dictatorship regime where anytime goods come into the Gaza Strip, they're not used to build hospitals or they're not used to make the people's lives better. They're used to build tunnels and rockets to then terrorize the neighbors. So I do think that the energy could be productive if directed correctly, but the correct place to direct it is towards the Palestinian leadership and then demand that they do a better job and use the billions of dollars of international resources that have gone into it to improve the lives of the Palestinian people. And if you look at what's happening here in Saudi Arabia, you've seen over 5 years, you've seen a massive shift in the economy, you've seen a massive shift in the sentiment. So it shows that it's possible. If you have leadership, if you have the right plan, you have the right execution, you eliminate a lot of the corruption, then what you're able to put in place is an opportunity for people to then have a better life. So it can be done. It just needs the will and the international understanding of what the problem is so that it can go forward. And you know, one other thing that's amazing, and I was speaking with Richard about this, is that when we were putting together the Peace to Prosperity Summit, one of the things that came to our mind is that if you're a young Muslim growing up in the Middle East back then, we were thinking, who are the role models? Who are the role models for these people? And a lot of what the Islamists did over the years was they would try to glorify terror and jihad and say, these are the role models. Over my time here at this conference in Saudi Arabia, I've been able to meet a ton of the younger entrepreneurs from Saudi Arabia. And I was thinking to myself, obviously what they're building is incredible, the businesses, they're digitizing their economy. But what struck me just in my heart was thinking, these are now becoming the role models for the next generation of youth in this part of the world. And again, that's all enabled by a good governance system, the right investment, the right leadership. And that is what should give us hope. And that's why, again, all of us coming together at a time like this shows the counter to what happens if you don't focus on capitalism, you don't focus on free markets, you don't focus on creating opportunity, then people are left with nothing. And that creates a lot more destruction, and it's a negative pull on the world.
That is very interesting. And just the last two questions, but before, let me be very clear. It's very wonderful to listen words of hope in a moment of crisis. I believe in the worst momentum, we have the possibility to use this terrible momentum finally to give an opportunity to young Palestinians, to young Israelis to create a new talented world in which really the compass have to be the personal expectation of peace and prosperity. But for that, we need leaders. In this part of the world, we have great leaders. I think you remember before Bahrain, there is here Salman, the Minister of Finance of the Crown Prince Salman worked a lot with you and the other guys to establish peace of Ibrahim some months ago, and a lot of leaders in a lot of countries. But here in Riyadh, we share the friendship with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who really was, is, and will be a change maker for a lot of reasons, not only because everyone arrived here from Europe or from USA for the first time, or after some years, see the very great changement in this country, but also because Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman tried to play a very crucial role, and I believe will be one of the leaders who could change the situation. What do you expect from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the next months, thinking about the great expectations a good leadership as the leadership of MBS gave not only here but around the world?
Well, I think what's happened over the last 5 years in Saudi Arabia has changed the trajectory of the Middle East, right? So that allows things like the Abraham Accords to occur, and it allows the interaction between people. What I've found is that, tribalism is often what keeps people apart, and the more we can create opportunities for people to come together, get to know each other, that creates opportunity for people to build linkage, and that gives people the chance to then create things, avoid conflict, and create better lives. In Saudi Arabia, by turning things around this way, now there's a whole generation of people who feel very vested in the future of this country. They see that now the prosperity is available to all of them, and they're working very hard to do it. And so you have a very empowered region trying to reduce conflict and saying, let's build up, let's create new experiences, new opportunities for our people. And like I just said before, creating new role models for the next generation. And so that's very critical. And then on the geopolitical sense, the work that they've been doing to try and figure out how to help the Palestinian people have a better life and to resolve the issue with Israel, again, that will create stability that this region has not seen in a very, very long time, and it will cement it. Again, we had things very quiet when President Trump left, and again, there was continuing to be momentum, but the recent terrorist attack shows that there's even a greater need for the leaders in this region to work harder to build bridges and to try to put all the forces of good and progress together and to reduce and really diminish the forces of evil. So I do think there's tremendous opportunity. I think Saudi Arabia has played an amazing role in turning this region around. I think everyone who I know who comes here, they walk away saying, oh my God, this is way different than I expected and way different than what I experienced. And I always find too, in politics or in life, when kind of the reality it outpaces the perception, then you have a massive opportunity. And here, that gap is huge. And the reality keeps getting better and better every time. And then everyone who comes, their eyes are open and they get very excited about wanting to be a part of it and seeing all the good that can come from the progress that has been made and will continue to be made. So net, incredibly bullish and grateful for what's happened here, because it is going to make the world a much more peaceful place.
I think the next year we will have a lot of events in politics. But Jared, appreciate it. I don't speak about that. I don't speak about European election, about American election, exactly in that period between. Last year we were here to discuss. This year we don't know what could happen next year after European election, American election, and a lot of great change in the Western democracies. But next year here in Riyadh we will have, and the Crown Prince attempted to big announcement, a very great event, not in politics, but in a World Cup of esports. It launched just last Monday. And I think could be very wonderful if the young guys of every corner of the world have the possibility to grow up in peace and in prosperity. And why not? To try to become champions in the esports, on the sport, or in music, in every type of expectation of life. But if I think about next year, I have the last question for Jared, because this session is a session about trust. And how can trust help bring progress in a moment as that, in which we have a very fragmented world and a complicated situation? You believe it's possible to continue to have trust on the future, confidence on future, and what type of trust you think we need to create this world in which, independently from trust of a politician in elections, please don't think about it, but for the future of generation, particularly in this area?
Yeah, so trust is a very simple concept, but obviously there's a lot of different shades of what it is and what it can be. But what I learned from my time in politics, and I'm actually seeing that in my time back in the private sector, is that trust really is everything. And people have the ability to do only so much on their own, but if you start building relationships and working together, the possibilities that are achievable become endless. And I was talking with a friend of mine recently who's still in government, and we were talking about some of the crazy things that we pursued together that we achieved. And now that I've had the chance to step away from my time in government, it's all a little surreal for me. And I was saying to him, I said, why did we try to accomplish those things? Like, why weren't we intimidated by the magnitude of what they were? Because for decades, nobody had done them. All of the experts thought that those things were impossible to achieve. And I said, why did we try? And he looked at me and he said, very simple. He said, the reason why we tried was because we were talking to all of the people who could influence the outcome, and they were all agreeing with what we wanted to accomplish. We just all didn't know how we were going to accomplish it or if it was possible. So I tell this story, and when he said that, it immediately struck me, and I said, he's absolutely correct, because trust is really what is needed in order to create these outcomes. And so, I'm an optimist. I find it's way more fun to wake up every morning being an optimist than a pessimist. But even when things are challenging and they emerge, if the right people in power are willing to work together and trust each other and try to do hard things, I do believe they have the ability to drive the world in a direction that will be much, much more positive. And again, I pray every morning, and those are what my prayer's for, whether it's the Jewish religion, the Islamic religion, we pray for peace. And it's funny how, even though we're also pious and we pray, so many people think that it's impossible to achieve. And so I do think we all have a role to play in trying to build connections and trying to get to know people who we disagree with and trying to understand with our own eyes and our own minds who people are, what they really want, and then working together to try to build a better world. And that's what the people in power have the ability to do. And I'm very grateful for all of those who are trying to do it, and I pray that they have the courage and the wisdom and the determination to give it everything that it has the potential to be.
Thank you so much, Jared Kushner. We will continue as FII to offer a platform to look at the future with this trust and with this future. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Não andarás sozinho, porque Deus sempre vela por você. Não deixe o mundo tirar tua visão. Escuta a voz no coração. Não temas, só creia em Deus. Levante a